Gracious God, may only your words be spoken. May only your words be heard. Amen. Seated. Good morning, friends. Good morning. It is good to be here with you all. My name is Ranjit Mathews, and I serve on the bishop's staff, our bishop diocesan staff, as what we call a canon to the ordinary. And in the announcement time, Reverend Jill and I have spoken. I'll just share a little bit more about what that is. Sounds sort of, I love the name of it, and it can seem a little bit, what is that? First of all, I just want to thank Reverend Jill for the invitation to be here. Reverend Jill is a good friend and a colleague, and it's a gift to be here with you all at the English service, and I'll be here with our Spanish-speaking friends at 11:30. So it's a delight for me. Friends, we're in this Easter season, right? The Easter season, and yet if we heard Reverend Jill and in the gospel, right, it is taking us back to actually the day before the crucifixion. So it can seem odd that we are in the fifth season liturgically in Easter, and yet for the gospel, we're heading back to in the day really where, Judas really turns on Jesus, right? And we are also at a time where Jesus is will have a time where he washes his disciples' feet, right? So, we're juxtaposed in that way, right? And I would invite you to go back to that time in the midst of us certainly being in the Easter tide, right? I think it's so moving what we see here. And Jesus' message is the same to his disciples, actually, as it is now to us, as people who have received now the resurrection. In that time, friends, his disciples, his friends, right, they were frightened. They were scared. They didn't know what was happening. Right? They didn't know, what was going to happen. Jesus saying these sort of coded words of you can't go to where I'm going. Right? That was all there. There was all that was happening, certainly amidst the Roman Empire. And if we're honest, with all the tumult that is going on, certainly all over the world, and in particular our country, we can feel a little bit scared ourselves, right? Maybe if we're honest, not knowing where life is going for us, we can feel that tumult in our hearts, in our bodies, maybe in our families, and more broadly, the world. And yet you hear this admonition that for us is not only ethical, because it's come certainly from Leviticus, from the Torah, that Jesus is pulling it, but it becomes for us more than ethical, friends, more than a right way of living. It is actually a commandment from Jesus that we would love one another as he loves us. Now, in that framework, friends, we can think, okay, as friends, we're called to love one another as Christians, right? As people who are following Jesus. But as Jesus makes note in his walk, as we'll soon see, is that he gave his life against the empire, which took his life, but he gave it for the world. And we're called, friends, to not just love ourselves, the people who might walk through and be members here of St. John's on the Green, but more broadly the world. That's the commandment that Jesus invites us into. There's this beautiful song that we may know, not just in evangelical circles, but really here in our Christian understanding as mainline denomination, that they will know we are Christians by our love. Right? We all know that song, I think, right? That they will know we are Christians by our love. It's really, the great church historian Tertullian says that so often. That when we go out there, people would know of us because of our language and because of our embodied movements of acts of service and of love out in the world. That's our charge, friends. Our world, if we're honest, doesn't look like that, right? We don't often see love cascading in acts out in the world. At least I sure don't. And in the words that we hear Jesus say in the gospel, glory, glorify, how many times does Jesus say glory? And we'll soon see that next week in the 6th Sunday of Easter. And I remember vividly this great church father of ours, Basil of Caesarea. Right? You might know the quote, right? The glory of God is a human being who's fully alive. Right? I'll say it again. This is Basil of Caesarea. The glory of God is a human being fully alive. What does that mean for us, friends, as we seek to follow Jesus in the 21st century, in 2025, in this time and in this place in America? I would submit, friends, as we see Jesus make his way to the cross, that we need to take our own steps of courage, of maybe speaking out on behalf of the gospel. Taking those steps that may be beyond our own comfort zone. And to speak to the gospel of Jesus Christ that goes beyond any political party, that goes beyond any principality here in our country. That is the command that Jesus demands on our lives. So often, friends, if I'm honest, I can think much in the way of love ourselves as Jesus loved us. And that might mean for me, love my own family. Right? As I think about all that's happening in our country, do I love my own family and forget about everybody else? So often, friends, if I'm honest, let me take care of Joanna, Dhruv, and Kabir. That's enough for me. But friends, Jesus' command actually goes much, much further. I was sitting and listening actually on Instagram to a woman who's actually an Italian woman, a lawyer, who's speaking out on behalf of the Palestinian people. And there was a question that was being asked to her, why do you feel like you have the courage to speak out even now about Palestinian brothers and sisters? And she said, how can I count, I can't count the people in my life as more important than the people who are suffering today. It moved me as a Christian. I remember when I was out in South Africa, maybe 20 years ago now, serving in Cape Town with the Anglican Church of Southern Africa, when it was a scourge of HIV and AIDS. And I remember meeting a man by the name of Zaki Akhmat, who was the leader of the Treatment Action Campaign. He was an atheist, and in fact a communist. And in that time, during that epic of South Africa, it was so costly, right, to take in nevirapine or AZT or a triple cocktail of medicine to help people who have HIV and AIDS. And Zaki, who had HIV, said that he was not going to take any medicine until that provision was made for everybody. Right? So he saw his family, friends, not even as a Christian, but he saw his family as beyond himself. And I was like, look at me. Here I am, a Christian, being inspired by people who are living the way of Jesus, but don't purport to be a Christian. Friends, we saw it this past week with our presiding bishop, Sean Rowe, who got some nationalized and international attention because he said to the administration that he was not going to put one group of people ahead of thousands of other people who have applied for refugee status here in our country. People who have been fast-tracked, whereas people who've been waiting for years have been denied entry. Friends, this is what we call embodied acts of love out in the world. This is what we call acting not just for our family, but for the family beyond our family. Friends, what is the call of St. John's on the Green here in Waterbury? As your vestry comes together, as you see who you are in this time and space, do we connote our family just being here in this community? Or does Jesus command us to see with broader eyes and hear with ears that are about the gospel? Amen.